Good morning. I'm going through and rereading The Lord of the Rings, which is something I haven't done in a very long time. I'm rereading it and applying a practice called Lecto Devina. Now, Lecto Devina is usually something that people do with the Bible, but essentially it is a practice in prayer of meditation, taking a verse from the Bible and going deep, deep into it to see how to apply that verse to your life. Obviously, you don't have to do it with just the Bible. I got this idea from a podcast called The Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, where they read through each chapter of Harry Potter and apply a word to it and pull meaning from those chapters using that word. I got the idea to apply this to The Lord of the Rings through a book called Tolkien's Ordinary Virtues. In the introduction of this book, he really outlines the different virtues that you can find within The Lord of the Rings in a very fantastical way. Specifically, this quote is what made me so interested in rereading The Lord of the Rings. Middle-earth is a training ground, a place where I can apprentice to those whose gifts of charity, wisdom, kindness, mercy, love, and faithfulness far surpass my own. The reason this resonated with me so much is that stories is what is going to keep us going forward, especially as we are going through some very dark times. And what better way to explore that than going through a book that is a hard journey that took over 13 years for Frodo to get the ring to Mordor. And throughout all of the hardships and the betrayal and the splitting of the party, good still triumphs. And what draws me into this book more than others is that it is not an immediate thing that happens. You get to see the in-between moments, the calms before the storms, the calm before the explosion of action, the small moments, the big moments, the slow progression as people grow and evolve and learn better, and the determination it took to get there. For what we will be going through is not going to be a fast battle, and there's not going to be one quick solution. And so we need stories like this that show us the in-between, that show us the slow movements, to see how to get through those times and hold those ordinary virtues close to us. As I'm going through this, I will share what I have found and some of my insights on this, because Lord of the Rings is just a great book, and I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to a series that I am titling Lessons Learned from Tolkien, where I am rereading The Lord of the Rings and seeing what lessons that I can learn by applying a practice called Lecto Devina. This was originally inspired by a podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text. Today's theme is myth. This is going to be a two-part theme, as I have just finished reading the foreword and I am on to the prologue. And I think both handle myth and history very differently, but are related in a very interesting way. In the foreword, Tolkien talks about how the story grew during a time that he was in war, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the story is about the war that he was going through. And he wanted to dispel the myth that the book is an allegory about the war that he went through, both of them. He says here, it is neither allegory nor topical. As the story grew, it put down roots into the past and threw up unexpected branches, but its main theme was settled from the outset by the inevitable choices of the ring as the link between it and the Hobbit. I find it very interesting that he uses tree as a metaphor to show how both of those things are connected, yet they are not directly related. He goes on to say that this is a book created from the desire of a tale teller to share his art in a long-form story. Though he does say that some of the feelings he went through did get put into the book, as one must have indeed personally to come under the shadow of war to feel its oppression. But he feels that people confuse applicability with allegory. But the one resides in the freedom of the reader, while the other is in the purposed domination of the author. Obviously, I had to go look up what allegory meant. Allegory means a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral one or a political one, versus applicability, which is the quality of being relevant or appropriate. Now, how does that relate to myth? The definition of myth is a typical story, especially one concerning the early history of a people, to explain a natural phenomena or societal phenomena. And just like allegories, people tend to draw meanings from myths, or myths are supposed to warn people against certain things that are happening. But Tolkien specifically states that that is not what he's doing in this story when he is building the history and the myths and legends of this one for his own satisfaction. So what he's saying is that he is happy that this book is open for interpretation and be able to draw from their experience and draw from the story that he is telling, but that is not the choice that he is making in telling the story. And especially that this is not an allegory for the two great wars that he lived through. And so he is dispelling the myth that people have drawn conclusions from, while also sharing the journey of how he created the myth of the Lord of the Rings. I especially love that he compares applicability to freedom while allegory to domination. And how if he were to make this an allegory, it would not necessarily be a story of hope that he has built up here. Which is funny that he's against allegory when the practice of Lecto Devina is about pulling allegories from the text. With that being said, the thing that I'm going to meditate on just based off of the foreword is how the myths and legends and histories that have built me and the world around me are applicable versus allegorical, comparing the freedom versus domination.